Tears were already streaming down the boy's face. Judge Caprio's hands shook as he reached for his wallet. The entire courtroom held its breath. What happened in the next 30 seconds would change everything about how justice is perceived in America. The 12-year-old stood frozen. His mother crumpled in the gallery. The court reporter paused mid-keystroke. Even the bailiff dabbed at his eyes. But no one knew what was coming next. No one knew about the phone call that would arrive in exactly 17 minutes. No one knew that this moment would go viral, reaching 47 million people in less than 48 hours. And absolutely no one anticipated that this single act of compassion would ignite the most controversial debate about judicial ethics in decades. This is that story. When young Marcus Williams entered Judge Frank Caprio's Providence Municipal Court that Tuesday morning, he had no idea he was about to become the focal point of a national discussion about justice, mercy, and the limits of judicial authority. His small frame barely visible behind the defendant's podium, clutching a crumpled sheet of paper covered in his mother's handwriting. Marcus was there for what should have been a routine parking violation hearing, yet nothing about this case would be ordinary. Judge Caprio, nationally renowned for his compassionate handling of municipal court cases, had built a reputation on treating every individual who entered his courtroom with dignity and understanding. For over 20 years, he had been the face of Court in Providence, a television program that highlighted his unique blend of fairness and humanity. But what was about to occur would challenge the very core of everything he believed about the law. Marcus was present because of a $75 parking ticket his mother had received while rushing him to the emergency room 6 months earlier. His severe asthma attack required immediate medical attention, and in her panic, she had parked illegally outside Rhode Island Hospital. "Your Honor," Marcus began, his voice barely a whisper, "my mom couldn't pay the ticket because she had to choose between buying my inhaler and paying the fine." The courtroom fell utterly silent. Judge Caprio leaned forward, his experienced eyes immediately sensing a deeper story behind the case. "Son, where is your mother today?" the judge asked gently. "She's working 3 jobs, Your Honor. She couldn't take time off because she had already missed too much work when I was in the hospital." What Judge Caprio did next would ignite the most heated controversy of his entire career. But first, you need to understand how this single moment would set off a firestorm reaching the highest levels of government. What began as a simple act of compassion was about to be dissected by CNN legal analysts, Supreme Court ethics experts, and media outlets across the nation. The boy's story was already heart-wrenching, but it was about to get even more sobering. Marcus explained that his mother, a single parent working as a night cleaner, a morning cashier, and a weekend babysitter, had been struggling to cover his medical expenses ever since losing her health insurance. "We moved to a smaller apartment," Marcus continued, "and Mom sometimes sells some of her things just to pay for my medicine." Judge Caprio felt a tightening in his chest. In 3 decades on the bench, he had presided over thousands of cases, but something about this boy's quiet dignity and resilience struck him differently. "Marcus, how are you doing in school?" the judge asked, trying to maintain his composure. "I have perfect attendance this year, Your Honor, and I got all A's last semester. My mom says education is the only way we can change our situation." The courtroom was utterly silent. Even the camera crew, who were used to filming emotional moments for the show, seemed visibly moved by the boy's determination. But what Judge Caprio was about to do would change everything. He reached into his wallet, pulled out several bills, and walked around the bench toward Marcus. The gesture was unprecedented. Judges almost never leave their benches during proceedings to personally hand money to defendants. "This is for your mother," Judge Caprio said, his voice thick with emotion. "And, Marcus, I want you to know that your courage in coming here today shows the kind of man you are becoming." The boy erupted into tears. The gallery broke into applause. The bailiff openly wept. But no one in that courtroom realized that within hours this act of kindness would trigger a formal judicial ethics investigation, threatening to jeopardize Judge Caprio's career. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity, but also reveal how the system tried to punish an act of genuine compassion. As the applause began to fade, Judge Caprio made a decision that would intensify the controversy even further. He picked up his gavel and made an announcement that left everyone in the courtroom stunned. "I'm not just dismissing this ticket," he announced. "I'm going to make sure this family receives the help they truly need." He turned to his bailiff and court clerk with instructions that went far beyond his normal judicial duties. "Contact Rhode Island Health Services. Enroll this boy in the state's Emergency Medical Assistance Program. Reach out to the housing authority regarding their situation and identify resources available to support his mother's employment needs." The courtroom was stunned. Judges rarely coordinate social services from the bench, but Judge Caprio wasn't done. "Marcus," he said, "I want you to come back here in 6 months, not for any violation, but so I can see how you're doing, and I want to meet your mother." What happened next was unprecedented in the history of municipal court proceedings. Judge Caprio asked the court reporter to pause the official record and spoke directly to the television cameras. "To everyone watching," he said, "this family represents thousands of families struggling in our community. If their story moves you, don't just feel pity, take action." He shared contact information for local charities and assistance programs, challenging viewers to get involved in their own communities. He turned his courtroom into a platform for social engagement. But the most astonishing part was yet to come. Within 3 hours of the show airing, something extraordinary began to unfold. Judge Caprio's office started receiving calls, not complaints but offers of help. A local business owner called to offer Marcus' mother a full-time job with health benefits. A pediatric pulmonologist volunteered to provide Marcus's care free of charge. A landlord offered the family a better apartment at reduced rent. Yet the most unexpected call came from a source that would completely change how this story ended. The call originated in Washington, D.C., not from a politician or bureaucrat, but from someone whose involvement would shock everyone familiar with the story. Dr. Anthony Fauci, then the nation's top infectious disease expert, had seen the clip circulating on social media. He personally called to offer assistance with Marcus's asthma treatment and to connect the family with specialists at the National Institutes of Health. "Judge Caprio," Dr. Fauci said, "what you did today shows the very best of American compassion. This boy deserves every chance to succeed, and I want to help make that possible." But even as support and aid poured in from across the nation, storm clouds were forming within the judicial oversight community. While the country celebrated Judge Caprio's empathy, legal ethics experts were preparing to challenge him, and the criticism came fast and fierce. The Rhode Island Judicial Ethics Committee announced it was launching a formal investigation into Judge Caprio's conduct. Legal scholars argued that, despite his good intentions, his actions violated core principles of judicial neutrality and the separation of powers. Professor Linda Morrison from Harvard Law School appeared on CNN, asserting that judges cannot act as social workers from the bench, no matter how sympathetic the case. The American Bar Association issued a statement expressing serious concern about the precedent set by judicial activism in the courtroom. Even some of Judge Caprio's longtime supporters began questioning whether he had overstepped. But the sharpest critique came from an unexpected figure, someone who had been watching Caprio's unconventional methods with growing unease and was now poised to deliver the gravest challenge to his career. Rhode Island Attorney General Patricia Williams had monitored Judge Caprio's approach for months with mounting concern. The Marcus Williams case, she claimed, was the tipping point. While Judge Caprio's intentions may be noble, she said at a press conference, he fundamentally misunderstands his role in the justice system. Judges interpret law. They do not provide charity or coordinate social services. She announced that her office would file a formal complaint with the state's Judicial Tenure and Discipline Board, seeking sanctions that could include suspension or even removal from the bench, warning that allowing every judge to ignore established procedures would be catastrophic. Williams added, "Our legal system would collapse into chaos. Compassion cannot override constitutional principles." The announcement sent shockwaves through the legal community and stunned Judge Caprio's supporters. But what Attorney General Williams did not anticipate was that her attack was about to backfire spectacularly. Hit the subscribe button now, because the final twist in this story will leave you completely speechless. Within 24 hours of Attorney General Williams' announcement, something unprecedented began to unfold. The story of Marcus Williams and Judge Caprio's compassionate response had gone viral across social media, but not in the way Attorney General Williams anticipated. Instead of backing her position, the public reaction overwhelmingly sided with the judge. The hashtag #StandWithCaprio began trending nationwide. Celebrities, politicians, and ordinary citizens all rallied in defense of Judge Caprio. But the most powerful response came directly from Marcus Williams. In a video that would eventually be viewed over 15 million times, the 12-year-old boy addressed Attorney General Williams head-on. Judge Caprio didn't break any laws. He just showed that sometimes the system can have a heart. If that's wrong, maybe the system itself needs to change. The video instantly went viral. News outlets amplified the story. Late-night talk show hosts ridiculed the Attorney General's position. Editorial boards across the country condemned her actions. The most damaging blow, however, came from within her own political party. 3 prominent Rhode Island Democratic legislators publicly urged Williams to drop the complaint, warning that pursuing judicial compassion would be political suicide. As the pressure intensified, Attorney General Williams found herself increasingly isolated. Polls indicated that 78% of Rhode Island voters opposed her actions against Judge Caprio. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was from the governor's office. Governor Daniel McKee, facing mounting political pressure and falling poll numbers, made a decisive call. "Patricia," he told the Attorney General, "this has gone far enough. The people of Rhode Island have spoken clearly. Find a way to resolve this without destroying a good man's career over an act of kindness." 3 days later, Attorney General Williams held another press conference. Looking visibly uneasy, she announced that after careful consideration and review of all relevant factors, her office was formally withdrawing the complaint against Judge Caprio. "While we maintain concerns about procedural irregularities," she stated, "we believe that in this particular case, the interests of justice are best served by allowing Judge Caprio to continue his service, with appropriate guidance on judicial protocols." The announcement was met with applause from the assembled crowd and widespread celebrations across social media. But the true celebration was unfolding in a modest Providence apartment, where Marcus Williams and his mother watched the news together. Thanks to the nationwide attention, Marcus's medical care was now fully funded by a charitable foundation created specifically for his case. His mother had begun her new job with full benefits, and they had moved into a better apartment provided by a local housing nonprofit. 6 months later, as promised, Marcus returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom. This time, however, he was not appearing as a defendant. He was there to receive a special recognition for academic excellence, presented by the judge who had transformed his family's life. As Judge Caprio placed the certificate in Marcus's hands, he spoke words that would define his legacy. "Marcus, what you've taught me is that sometimes the most important law is the law of human kindness. And that's a law we should never hesitate to follow." The courtroom erupted in the longest standing ovation in the history of court in Providence. But the most meaningful moment came after the cameras stopped rolling. As the courtroom emptied, Judge Caprio asked Marcus to stay for a private moment, away from the crowds and cameras. He knelt to the boy's eye level. "Marcus, I want you to remember something. What happened here wasn't about me being a judge or you being in trouble. It was about 2 human beings recognizing each other's dignity. Never forget that power isn't about the position you hold. It's about how you use that position to lift others up." Marcus nodded, understanding far more than his 12 years should have allowed. "Judge Caprio," he said quietly, "my mom wants to study law now. She says she wants to help families like ours. Do you think she could do it?" Judge Caprio smiled, his eyes glistening with tears once again. "Marcus, after everything your family has overcome, I believe your mother can accomplish anything she sets her mind to. And if she ever needs a letter of recommendation for law school, she knows exactly where to find me." As they walked out of the courtroom together, neither knew that a security camera had recorded this private conversation. That footage would later inspire the creation of a scholarship fund for single parents pursuing legal education. The Marcus Williams Scholarship Fund, supported by donations from viewers worldwide, has since helped over 200 single parents attend law school. Judge Caprio continued serving on the bench. Judge Caprio remained on the bench for 3 more years before retiring to dedicate himself to criminal justice reform advocacy. He frequently cited the Marcus Williams case as the moment he realized that true justice isn't merely about enforcing rules, it's about recognizing the humanity in every person who comes before you. Marcus Williams graduated as valedictorian of his high school class and earned a full scholarship to Brown University, where he is studying pre-law. His mother, Maria Williams, completed law school last year and now works as a public defender, specializing in cases involving families living in poverty. Attorney General Patricia Williams lost her re-election bid by the largest margin in Rhode Island history. In her concession speech, she made a statement that surprised many. "I learned something important from this experience. Sometimes standing on principle means standing on the wrong side of humanity. Judge Caprio was right and I was wrong." The story of Marcus Williams and Judge Caprio became more than a viral video. It evolved into a lasting reminder that in a world often dominated by rigid rules and cold institutions, there is still room for compassion, humanity, and the courage to do what is right, even when it defies expectations. Sometimes the most powerful law is the one written in the human heart. But there was one more chapter to this story that nobody anticipated. 3 years after the initial incident, Marcus Williams made headlines again, this time for achievements that proved Judge Caprio's faith in him was well placed. Marcus had not only maintained his perfect academic record, but had also started something extraordinary. Using the attention from his viral story, he launched a non-profit organization called KIDS, Helping Kids in Court. The organization provides support and advocacy for minors who find themselves in legal situations without proper representation or understanding. "I remembered how scared I was that day," Marcus explained in an interview on his 15th birthday. "Judge Caprio made me feel heard and respected, but not every kid gets that. Some children face much worse situations than a parking ticket, and they're all alone." Working alongside his mother, who was then in her second year of law school, Marcus helped coordinate legal assistance for over 200 children across Rhode Island. His organization partnered with law schools to provide pro bono legal services and created a mentorship program linking children in the system with successful adults who had overcome similar hardships. The program's impact attracted the attention of national advocacy organizations, and Marcus was invited to speak at conferences throughout the country. His message was simple yet profound. The system functions best when it remembers that behind every case number is a human being with a story worth hearing. Judge Caprio, now retired but still closely following Marcus's progress, often remarked that witnessing the boy grow into an advocate was more rewarding than any personal career accomplishment. "That day in my courtroom, I thought I was helping Marcus," he reflected. "I had no idea he would go on to help so many others." The ripple effects of the case continued to expand. It became required reading in multiple law school courses on judicial ethics and community justice. Professor Morrison from Harvard, who had initially criticized Judge Caprio, later published a revised paper, acknowledging that exceptional circumstances can indeed call for extraordinary judicial compassion, provided it advances the broader interests of justice. The American Bar Association, which had initially expressed concerns, eventually recognized the Marcus Williams case as a catalyst for important discussions about empathy in the legal system. They established a new Judicial Excellence Award, specifically honoring judges who devise innovative ways to address underlying social issues through their courtrooms. Even Attorney General Patricia Williams, who had faced political consequences for opposing Judge Caprio, eventually found her own path to redemption. After losing her re-election, she joined a criminal justice reform organization and became a proponent of judicial discretion in cases involving families in crisis. "My error wasn't caring about judicial protocols," she said years later. "My error was forgetting that protocols exist to serve justice, not the other way around." The Marcus Williams story evolved into a case study taught not only in law schools, but also in schools of social work, public administration, and even business programs emphasizing ethical leadership. It illustrated how a single moment of genuine human connection could produce waves of positive change far beyond the initial encounter. During Marcus's high school graduation, Judge Caprio was invited to give the keynote address. Looking out at the young faces in the audience, including Marcus seated in the front row as valedictorian, He shared words that captured the heart of their story. Today, you're graduating into a world that will often tell you to follow the rules, follow your path, and avoid making waves. But I want you to remember that every major step forward in human dignity has come from someone willing to prioritize compassion over convenience and humanity over strict protocol. Marcus Williams showed me that true leadership isn't measured by the authority you hold, but by the bravery to use that authority to uplift others. The audience stood in a 5-minute ovation. Yet the most profound moment came afterward, when Marcus approached Judge Caprio with an announcement that left the veteran judge speechless. "Judge Caprio," Marcus said, "I've chosen my major at Brown. I'm going to study both law and social work. And I want you to know that when I become a judge someday, I will remember your lesson. The most important law is written in the human heart." Judge Caprio embraced the young man he had first met as a scared 12-year-old. In that instant, both understood that their story wasn't about a parking ticket, nor merely about judicial compassion. It was about recognizing potential in every person, especially those whom society has dismissed. The final twist came years later, when Marcus Williams was admitted to Harvard Law School with a full scholarship. His admission essay, titled "The Day Justice Looked Like Kindness," became legendary among admissions officers and was eventually published in the Harvard Law Review. In it, he wrote, "That day in Judge Caprio's courtroom, I learned that justice isn't a destination you reach by following a strict map of rules. Justice is a journey guided by your heart, trusting that doing right by one person can in some way make the world a little more just." Today, the parking space outside Rhode Island Hospital, where Marcus's mother had parked illegally all those years ago, bears a small plaque reading, "Sometimes breaking the rules is the most human thing you can do." The hospital administration installed it after Marcus's story became widely known, serving as a reminder that emergencies call for empathy, not enforcement. The story of Marcus Williams and Judge Caprio proved that, in a world increasingly defined by rigid systems and inflexible thinking, there is still room for leadership that views people not as cases to process, but as human beings deserving dignity, compassion, and hope. And sometimes, that is the most powerful verdict of all.